I think it's creating really responsible citizens, art school is, and that there's a lot of good that comes from creative thinking. And part of the reason I'm personally so interested in empowering artists is because I think you guys, artists, have the likeliest potential to help our society much more than a whole lot of other people. And you're much better problem solvers and more creative in that field and direction than anybody else. Every time I look at the name of this panel, I think it says from hyperlogical to virtual. And that's because I think that arts are such an integral part of our community and our lives and our society. But, you know, that's probably just for those of us who are immersed in the arts. And the question really is, beyond that, how do we get the rest of the world to realize how brilliant all of us are? And to an extent, this panel will address that and discuss it. To my right is Stephanie Pereira. And to my left, far left, is Patricia Larkin Green and Tristan Hummel. And, you know, if you enjoy this panel, it is the panelists who deserve credit, and they selected me, and they gave me a script, and they thought maybe I'd follow it. But, you know, regardless, they're the ones who have all the content, and I'm only serving as a facilitator. So they've decided that Tristan should speak first.
I work at the Chicago Loop Alliance. There I'm the programs manager and curator, and I was pulled into this because we offer free opportunities for artists to exhibit their work downtown. We take all of these empty storefront spaces and give them over as art galleries to local guys. And I think I've got some photos of just this program. There we go. This is one of our spaces at Block 37 with the Chicago Photography Collective. This is a really stellar space. They're not all so clean. But basically, you know, we bring the paint and the nails, and the artist brings their work, and they're not charged utilities or rent or anything like that. There's no commission taken on their artwork. It's just something we do to beautify the neighborhoods. Next slide. Here's another space. This is one that's still open up on 208 South Wabash. Actually, after this, you guys should all go check it out. It's just a few blocks down. Right now, there's a group in there called Phantom Gallery Network. They're an international ensemble of creatives who randomly inhabit storefronts like this across the nation. This isn't their work per se, but it's some of the stuff. This is another space at 202 South State where we have Nice Ones artwork up. If you are in Wicker Park ever, you'll see that stuff all over the buildings. We gave him a little show. He also tagged the roof of that building, which was great. More artwork in the same space, different artists. So basically we approach these property managers and say, hey, we want to take your underutilized urban environment and we want to make it beautiful because ideally an empty space, it's hard for businesses to conceptualize what their business might look in there because there's no potential at the time. So by creating an art gallery, we make the argument that we are not only providing something great for the public to see as they walk by and great opportunity for artists, but we're actually making their space more viable as a rental property because it's been beautified, inhabited, and people, you know, thus desire it. And so far, at the height of the program, which launched 3 years ago, we had like 26 spaces, and we only have 8 today. And so I like to think that it's because we've helped, you know, get people, get tenants into these spaces. Next slide. This is a great exhibition here by the Chicago Urban Arts Society. We partner with local organizations to help curate these galleries often, and so we give you know, a prime downtown location where about, you know, 40,000 people a day walk past these windows. So it's great publicity for artists as well. And of course, we hire a publicist and people like that with our resources that they wouldn't have had access to. It's Mobile. It's a very empty-looking gallery. Some hot dogs. A dude, 2 chicks, some art. That's it.
Let me ask you a question. I mean, I think we should go through everybody mostly, but how long have you been doing this?
I've been doing it 4 months in this program as a program manager here, but I've been curating.
Wait. One of the things that I'm really interested in is how the arts makes opportunities available to people, and that you don't really know where good news is going to come from. So did you apply for this job, or did they come to you? How did you end up here?
Well, in college I had nowhere to show my artwork, so I rented a CTA train and filled it up with art. called Art on Track. And so I ran this train. I run it every year. It circles just the loop track, and it's open to the public. And so I did that long enough, and it's local. And so they finally came to me and said, hey, we do art. We've got a job for you. And I said, cool, it'd be nice to get paid.
I think part of the moral of the story is do what you believe in. And if you believe in it strong enough and it's a beautiful enough thing, there are going to be other people who identify with that and, seek to enable you to do more. Patricia Larkin Green, what's your story?
I'm the curator for Open Wall, and we like to say it's the art gallery meets government office. And back in May of 2011, when Alderman Paywar from the 47th Ward took office, one of the volunteers from his office asked me if I would curate it. So what the focus or the mission is of the Open Wall exhibit is to really shine on the local artists of the 47th Ward. So we have a committee that came together, and what they do is decide what the focus is going to be for the year. And we are right now completely focused on building a strong foundation and structure so that in years to come, what we can do is start having calls for entries. But in the first year, we're really focused on public relations and creating an identity and introducing the alderman's office and the constituents that come through to so many of the amazing arts organizations that exist right in the ward. And I wanted to make a slide to show people how to get in touch with us. And this really isn't just for the 47th Ward. I've been participating in some of the 2011 cultural programs, and it's resonating. And Michelle Boone has even said that she really sees a great opportunity for more art to be shown on the walls of different government spaces. This next coming year, we're going to be focused on some bi-monthly gallery exhibits. We do an annual student showcase, which is really exciting because it gives an opportunity for more people to get involved at that level. And the exhibit that's in the office right now is showcasing that particular show. It's made up of volunteers that are parents and teachers who volunteered their time to teach high school students not only a 12-project art lesson, but also how to install it and mentor elementary students. So this is a slide that shows different images of some of the exhibits. So we started out with a much more traditional exhibit that showcased the faces and spaces of the ward, and then we moved and collaborated. That was in collaboration with Ravenswood Art Walk. The second show, we highlighted Lill Street and Art Reach, which we're fortunate to have in our ward, and we highlighted several of the artists from that space. And the current exhibit is for the high school students, and that is a program that's Arteology, and that's a volunteer organization that a parent started because she wanted to see more enrichment of the arts in the local schools programs. We're going to have a revolving showcase of the high school students once a year, and we're also reaching out to several other of the arts organizations. As a matter of fact, the next exhibit will be April 20th, and that's the American Indian Center. And I've been having so much fun making contacts with them and discussing all the potential that we can completely transform the space again to showcase their work. On the heels of that, we'll have the Chicago Printmakers Collaborative, and that'll be followed by the Chicago Mosaic School. And the Cornelia Arts Building will be highlighted. And then, again, another exhibit for the high school students. What we're going to, the committee, which is a very diverse group of artists, business professionals, and parents, people of different interests, in the community have come together, and we're setting up the stage for next year where we'll be doing call for entries and creating more of an internet presence.
You know, not all aldermen are as awesome as Pawar is. This guy is a first-year alderman and didn't expect to win, and was hanging out at his folks' house when the election results came in, and instantaneously had to schedule a celebration party when he found out that he was leading. He's pretty amazing. I'm aware of other wards where you've got some clunkers as aldermen. And not always is the situation that the alderman goes to some arts entity and says, help me, let's do something together. More often you need to exercise power in numbers and go as a small group of maybe 9 to 10, 11, a dozen people and say, we would like to do this and we would like you to cooperate with us. You know, these people are susceptible to arm pressure, these people being aldermen. You know, and this is something that can be accomplished in other places around the city. The Department of Cultural Affairs right now is creating a cultural plan. And one of the things you hear in so many of these meetings is how the people, you guys, want, but also the not art people, want culture being brought more to the communities and not all down in the more homogenous loop. No offense. But, you know, being drawn out so that the people can participate in their own immediate community. So, you know, what's happened for Patricia has been really fabulous, and I'm in the same ward, which is why I know some of it. But, you know, it's something that I encourage you guys also to pursue. Last and certainly not least is Stephanie. And she's been working with this entity you might have heard of called Kickstarter.
When we were planning this panel, we were really excited about this idea of talking to people about not only finding space and funding for your practice, but this idea of really putting your work into the public sphere. So everything that we're talking about and we're sharing with you today is about how people are getting their work into public. So Kickstarter, I think, is an incredible way for doing that. It's an incredible public engagement tool. We are a platform for funding creative projects. A Kickstarter project is something specific and something that's finite, something that has a beginning and an end. It also includes rewards. So when someone pledges money to your project, they get something in exchange for that pledge. Those rewards should benefit not only you guys who are making the work, but also the people pledging money to you. So that's really important about Kickstarter. We've been around since April 2009. We've seen a lot of really fun success since then. To date, $150 million has been pledged by 1.5 million people to over 50,000 projects. We see about $3 million come through the site each week. A little less than half of all projects succeed. And of those 1.5 million project backers, almost 300,000 of them are what we call repeat backers, or people who have pledged money to more than one project. So we think that a real creative community is emerging on our site, which we're thrilled about. Of course, our fee, we have a fee. We are for-profit. So if you are charged a 5% fee only if you hit your funding goal, and I'll explain a little bit about how that works in a second. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a category breakdown. This is from January, so the numbers are slightly off. But film is the behemoth on our site. It's at actually $50 million now. Music being number 2 is a huge, huge success story on the site. Design is next in terms of money, but visual art is next in terms of number of projects. So visual art is a really, really big category on the site. And each of these categories have their own success story. So you can see dance, while only $1 million has been pledged, it has the highest success rate on the site. It's closer to 70%. So there's something really exciting happening in the dance community. So just to give you a sense also, for those of you who don't know, how we work, the funding model is all or nothing. So when you create a project on Kickstarter, you set a goal and a period of time to reach that goal within, usually about 30 days or so. So this is an example, which is to put on a 24-hour cycle of waiting for Godot. They have $575 to raise and just 10 hours to go. If they did not raise that $575, nobody would be charged. Everyone just walks away. It's like nothing ever happens. The money only gets charged and goes to project creators if you hit that goal. Of course, whenever a project gets to this point, they do succeed. It would be sad if they didn't. So Also, a lot of the projects in the news on Kickstarter, you might hear the $25,000, the $50,000, the $100,000, and most recently the $1 million projects. And that's, of course, very exciting. We're thrilled by that. But I do want to point something out, that really tall green bar there, those are successful projects that have raised between $1,000 and $5,000. So that's almost half of all projects on the site. And then if you take the smaller green bar immediately to the right, that's $5,000 to $10,000. So if you take 10,000 and below, that's just about 2/3 of projects on the site. So most of the energy is happening in that space. A little bit more about rewards that I mentioned earlier. Very typically, it's a copy of the thing. So if you're someone who's writing a book, you would offer a copy of the book in exchange for a pledge. If you're making an album, you would offer a copy of the CD or even a digital download, and so on and so forth. Visual artists, I think that if you're making an original artwork or a public art piece, you might think about a limited edition series of prints, or you might think of some sort of creative experience, like a studio visit, or maybe offering a commission for a new work for somebody else. Really, this is about shared stories, offering some sort of token or memento as well. So maybe someone will pledge $5 and you'll send a postcard of the completed thing with a thank you note. An important thing to know is that backers of these projects the majority of them come from your own network. So 75% to even 85% of backers come from your own network, your friends, your family, your social networks like Facebook or Twitter, depending where you are. And it's not until a project looks like it's going to succeed that you're going to really find those other people. These are those repeat backers I talked about earlier. This is your friends of friends. This is when maybe there's a buzz around your project. Final point, a great thing about Kickstarter is built into every single project is something called project updates. It functions like a blog. You can tell people what's going on with your process. Today we had a film shoot. It was really successful. Today I went into the studio and realized that everything I'm doing is totally wrong. People will share really positive stories as well as sad stories, but these people who are following your project they care about your project. They really care about what you have to say and what's going on with it. So it's exciting for them.
Excellent. I don't have any pithy comments. All right, I've been supplied a list of questions. Maybe we'll address them. I think that everything in life is kind of like a trade-off, so that when the economy takes a downturn, it presents certain kinds of opportunities. Stephanie, do you think that Kickstarter would have been as likely to happen in 2009 if in 2008 the economy hadn't headed south?
I think Kickstarter has emerged from a particularly lack of public funding in the arts and particularly funding for individual artists. So there's definitely a sincere need for it.
So perhaps Kickstarter wouldn't have had, and I think Kickstarter is a really good news kind of a program. One of the things that I'm particularly interested in, I'm about empowering artists, and sometimes I wonder, Tristan, if certain government entities aren't prone to taking advantage of artists and not necessarily creating a win-win scenario, but we have Mayor Daley's, he used to be mayor here, edict that we have less crime in the Loop, so therefore we need more people, so therefore let's put some stuff in the stores. Who can we have do that? And let's bring people into the Loop to walk around.
Right.
Care to disagree?
I'm not even going to disagree. I'm just going to comment.
Okay.
Certainly, I think first and foremost, the disposition of government agencies or really any sort of companies that art is free. And it's not necessarily that people are purposely disrespecting artists, but I think as an artist you're likely to get taken advantage of because you're expected to produce your work for free. I think the pop-up program has been really good about trying to cover costs for artists, for install and things like that, and presenting itself as an opportunity for the artists, not as a way to take advantage of them to rent storefronts. And I think the Loop Alliance, in bringing on a curator like me, actually, someone who's artist-minded, has really shown that they're willing to take steps to make sure that it's artists first. Does that make sense?
Okay, let's stick with you a moment.
Right.
So the Chicago Loop Alliance has also been responsible for these major sculptures that have appeared for a 6-month or so period of time in the Loop, first with Tony Tassett's Huge Eyeball, and last year with Kay Rosen's Do Good large banner and Do Good campaign, and coming up Jessica Stockholder doing something brilliant with color. She's fabulous. where, I mean, like, I saw a lot of criticism of one of those two, well, of Kay. And I think Kay is a really fabulous artist, but I saw criticism about how she'd sold out, this was just done for government. Can you comment without jeopardizing your salary?
Yeah, well, I'm even fine with jeopardizing it a little bit, I guess. And just this is my first time with them, and being back there, it's like, I don't think people get the arts. I don't think the people who are funding it oftentimes understand, like, maybe this is a selling out maneuver for Kay, or maybe it's not. But I know that with the stockholder piece, it was kind of like, they came to me and they're like, Jessica needs to cover 4 buildings in vinyl or in color in the streets, figure it out. And so I think things aren't planned maniacally. And I think I don't think Kay Rosen, I don't think being connected to a city initiative, something that promotes doing good, no less, is really a sellout. You could make that argument, maybe.
Maybe. But on the other hand, I think there's 2 notions here. First of all, I think Kay did a brilliant piece and it was really wonderful. Second of all, there's a sense among art people that if you are successful, you've sold out. Or if you get real acknowledgement, you've sold out. And you've got to know that's BS. Each of you are entitled to make as many millions of dollars as you can accumulate. And, in the process, you should do good. But, you are not compromising yourself by being successful. Big point. Patricia, how's it working with government? Is it like smooth and easy and they just go, oh, yeah, sure? Is it highly bureaucratic? What's your experience?
Well, I've been really surprised and delighted by my experience. It's beyond my wildest dreams. And a lot of it has to do, I think, with the character of the alderman that I'm working with. Amaya Pewar is a strong advocate of the arts. And his staff, my liaison there is Ernie Constantino, has a lot of experience working with the public arts. I've been given a lot of free rein. And the only things that I can't do with the exhibits that I'm curating are I can't have any nails on the walls, no nudes, and nothing partisan. And so that gives me a pretty wide breadth.
All right, now I think that one of the trends I see happening in the art world, in the world, is that art is having more of a social conscience. And, it seems to me that there's a lag. I mean, I didn't think in terms of the Iraqi conflict that artists got engaged very quickly in terms of commenting on it. But I also today see an awful lot of artists being much more socially conscious and addressing whatever good happens to be and how come we're not better. And I sense that each of these individuals who come at it from an individualistic artist's point of view have engaged in entities and organizations that give much more voice and breadth to their interests. And I'm interested in the notion, how do you feel, in terms of doing that? Where do you get gratification?
Me personally, or artists who are me personally? A big conversation. I'm the director of the art program at Kickstarter, and a huge part of my job is talking to individual artists every day about their work and their practice. And I think actually kind of relating to the question you asked, Tristan, it's like what you're doing in your studio, not every single moment of that belongs in a place like Kickstarter or belongs in a public forum. So it's working with people to think what piece of that belongs in a public forum, which I find incredibly gratifying because it's a great conversation to have. But also, how do you, when you do that, when you translate it to the public forum, how do you maintain the integrity of your creative practice so that you're not suddenly in the position of running a fundraiser or asking your friends for money? So instead, it feels like you're doing something incredibly vibrant and powerful and as meaningful as the work you're doing anyway, and you just happen to be doing it in a public forum and you're giving people an exclusive opportunity to participate. And that conversation I have with artists, how do you do that, is one of the most gratifying conversations I get to have on a regular basis.
Let's take these two guys. Now, each of you are artists and each of you are working with government. Is that a schism for you? I mean, can you reconcile those two activities? Do you divide your time religiously and do your personal stuff for X hours a day or a week and government stuff for X hours or so? and what does that do to your head? Tristan, why don't we start with you?
I made a tough decision. When I took this job, I decided that I was just going to become 100% what my position was. So like tomorrow I'm building walls for artists, all day, and then I think in the evening we're doing some gallery tours, and then so I just committed myself 100% to the entity I work for, so I wouldn't have a conflict.
So does your art miss you?
I was never that great. I got. Thank you. I did apply for the pop-up program. I now manage twice, and I got declined both times. And my friend was running the program at the time, so
I think there's some statistic that says in excess of 75% of people who go to art school aren't making art 5 years out of art school. And I'd like to see that number, go down significantly. But on the other hand, I think it's creating really responsible citizens, art school is, and that there's a lot of good that comes from creative thinking. And part of the reason I'm personally so interested in empowering artists is because I think you guys, artists, have the likeliest potential to help our society much more than a whole lot of other people. And that you're much better problem solvers and more creative in that field and direction than anybody else. I'll repeat that.
More applause.
All right, so Patricia, how about you? You are still doing your own art practice.
Yes.
And is there a schism there? How do you balance your time and your roles?
Well, I'm really disciplined. Actually, my experience in corporate America has really helped me, to my surprise, become very disciplined with my time. And so when I'm working on, for example, my artwork, it's like a date that I don't break. And then when I'm working on open wall, I'm also, I plan ahead of time and document things, and I will only spend so many hours a week on that particular activity. So that's a big way I manage it. And I don't have a conflict, emotionally. One of the things that I've learned in business, if any of you is familiar with the concept of Venn diagrams, when I'm looking at the circles of the different cultures that I participate in and where they overlap, and I'm really trying to focus my activity and energies on that.
All of you are engaged. I mean, there's a notion. I'm going to back up. I believe that there's a lot of similarity between artists and entrepreneurs, and that there is a certain amount of education and information, and then a hunch, and that you follow the hunch and your inclination, and you apply the knowledge to pursue an activity that you hope brings really positive results. But on the other hand, there's also a simultaneous awareness that business and the arts don't necessarily see eye to eye on much of anything. Can each of you address, the relationship of your experience of the arts and business coming together or not?
Yeah, I think it's a question I get a lot. It's interesting because I have a lot of colleagues at Kickstarter who work with different sectors of the creative world, and I'm the one that's charged with the visual art world. And I think that the visual art world, artists in particular, we all have the most fraught relationship with business and the concept of money. Artists are always asking me, why am I commoditizing my practice? Why am I putting a dollar sign on my practice? Maybe they're very intentionally working outside of the gallery system, but they're finding themselves in a place where they still have to run a business to be successful artists. And there's a struggle there, and I think it's figuring out how much of that you want to take on yourself, how much of that you want to maybe hire an accountant, or how much of that is part of the story that you tell the world as a professional practicing artist. So I think it's different for everyone. There's a spectrum, and I do think that it's fraught, and I wish it wasn't as much, actually.
Let's go to Patricia.
Repeat the question, please.
How much money do you get paid? What's your experience about the integration of arts and business or arts and government, and is it sympathetic or difficult or what?
Oh, yeah. Well, with my experience, which is, quite frankly, I haven't been doing it that long, but what we're really looking for is the common ground, and to get a foundation built on that common ground that we share. And so, for example, with Open Wall, you know, it's a government office that's been turned into an art gallery, and so there's immediate benefits for the people who work there, who are putting in, you know, 60 to 80-hour weeks, and now their environment, it changes the tone, you know, depending upon the exhibit that is in that space. And it also creates, you know, a conversation piece. So as people are walking into this government space, they may be coming charged with emotion. You know, they may be angry, they may have a petition, they may have a complaint. Sometimes they're even happy about something that they want to share, you know, and they come into the government office, and all of a sudden, you know, they look around and there's something else to talk about. Or while they're waiting, they can walk through and take a tour of the artwork. We've even had sculptures in there that people are touching and curious, you know, how someone made that. So it's a great icebreaker. Now, that has been a great opportunity where the common ground there, and the thing that I'm trying to leverage with what I'm doing with Open Wall, is give more publicity and exposure to what the artists are doing in the community with their expression and their practice, and then what the government office is doing and how they're reaching out to the community. So because we are building this up from that shared experience, I think it's going to be very successful, and it's been a great, I mean, it has been such an amazing experience for me to meet all the incredible people in my community that I didn't even know existed.
This guy Pawar is pretty amazing. You know, every Friday afternoon he sends out a newsletter and says, this is what I did, this is why I did it, this is what I'm thinking about, let me know what you think. And, you know, and usually just go, whoa, he's talking to me. Yeah. So, all right, Tristan, with the Chicago Loop Alliance and the Tony Tassett and the Kay Rose and the Jessica Stockholder, which are significant pieces, my sense is that, and to correct me if I'm wrong, the Chicago Loop Alliance has spent in excess of $250,000 on each of these pieces to see them happen. Is that correct? Easily. Where does that money come from?
Tax dollars.
Is it tax dollars, or is it from businesses in the Loop?
So, are all of you familiar with the SSA program? It's the statewide program where different business districts essentially get together and vote to pay extra money that goes towards improving the neighborhood. So all the business owners here 70 years ago or so got together and said, listen, we want to pay 1% more tax, and that money goes directly to a program that then will manage that and make sure the neighborhood is, you know, washed and kept nice. Like we do the power washing on the streets, we do the, you know, the kiosks and stuff for the buses. We do a lot of like sort of things that the city either didn't have the funding for at the time or doesn't want to pay for, so we take that load from them. And then we actually decided, you know, uniquely to interpret improving the neighborhood as an arts thing. You know, we could have decided to just have shinier sidewalks or something, but instead we decided, okay, we're going to do pieces like Kay Rosen's and Tony Tassett's to try to bring people in through sort of a creative force.
So this is a tax on the businesses.
This is just a tax on the businesses.
So nobody in this room per se spent money on that happening?
Not unless you run a business on State Street.
And this isn't voluntary on the part of the businesses. You don't go up and down the street with a hat saying you have X square feet, you should pay X dollars. It's like they have some government entities collecting a tax.
Right, and they initially voted on it, and then it has to be reinstated every 50, 60 years or so by the people, but you can also just show up and have to pay that extra tax.
Okay, so what's your experience about how these businesses pay that tax, like the art pop-ups and these three annual summer projects?
So what happens with this money is we don't just get it and then say, okay, we're going to spend all this. We just implement. So we've got like this big curatorial committee together built out of these business people who say we're going to allocate X amount of dollars to each project. And then we go out and make that work, and the funding goes up and down on different products or projects depending on the whims of the council.
But basically you would say that they appreciate it or like it because they're repeating it.
Yeah, I think we've been very successful in bringing sort of an interesting character to the Loop, which is rapidly becoming a neighborhood.
Okay, cool. Let's open this up to the people in the audience for comments and questions, please. Go ahead. I'll repeat it.
I was actually just wondering if you could talk more about what you do.
What I do?
Yeah.
I'm doing a panel. I'm doing a panel at 3 o'clock, and all by myself about empowering artists, where I give away all the clues. And if you can attend that, you'll get her. She asked what I do. You know, I'll tell you about it. Other comments or questions? Yes.
I was wondering, with the pop-up art, do the artists sell their work? Is there any way of selling them?
The question is about the pop-up spaces. Is the art, how much art is being sold? Does it happen, etc. For Tristan?
So that's actually really cool. We don't, because we're getting these spaces free from property managers, it would be kind of weird for us to turn around and like run a business out of it. So we let the artists sell their work with no commission. You're totally allowed to sell work. Artists do sell work. Oftentimes artists have to sell artwork just to make up for the, you know, the cost of putting it in there, or the time, you know. So yeah, sales of artwork is encouraged and allowed, and we don't take a commission.
I think artists learn a lot by organizing exhibits and, you know, cooperating with other artists, and most importantly, sharing mailing lists. I have a question for Stephanie. Is it strategically wise to lowball the amount of money you need for your project, or you should, no?
No.
You should put it as what it actually kind of should be.
Right. I mean, so when the company was being founded and we came up with this idea of the all or nothing model, the idea was that I want to you know, make a new CD. It's going to cost me this much money to go into the recording studio to mix and master it, to package it, distribute it, etc. You figure out what that number is, then you make your project. Let's say it's $5,000. Probably more than that, but let's just say $5,000. If you were to ask for less than that, it would put you in a strange position, because in your Kickstarter project, you're saying to the world, hello, your money is going to directly support me realizing the CD, and then I'm going to finish it, and I'm going to send you a CD in exchange for your support. Let's say you only got $3,000. You still need another $2,000 to actually do the project. How are you going to give all those people the CD? How are you going to realize the project you told the world you're going to realize? So when working with people and advising them on how to set their goal, it is often the case with larger scale projects that maybe your budget is actually, let's say it's $20,000, but your network can really only bear $5,000. So really what you want to do is think really strategically about what the story you're telling to the world through your Kickstarter is. I want to make a CD, it's going to cost me $20,000. I'm raising money through X, Y, and Z, but I need this extra $5K to sort of finish it, and if you help me get there, then I'll give you the CD. But you're letting people know that that's not the whole story, and they're not expecting you to turn over a CD in like 6 months or whatever it's going to take you.
Thank you. I'm not sure you provided these statistics. Think about more questions. I'll get back in a second. What percentage of Kickstarter projects succeed?
46%.
And are they vetted? I mean, before a Kickstarter project shows up on the Kickstarter site, you guys pass judgment on whether it's pretty or viable, or
no,
we want
it's not a. We do approve projects, but what we're looking for to make sure that they meet our guidelines. So we're making sure that it is a creative project and that it is not about a cause or a charity, or what we call a Fund My Life project. So you can't say like, "Hi, I'm an artist. I need to pay rent on my studio for the next year." That is a Fund My Life project.
Okay, cool. More questions? Yes.
Yeah, it's really, when I first started a Kickstarter, I backed a project that was a woman who wanted to make a new body of paintings. So she kind of made this commitment to her community. She said, I'm going to make 6 paintings in 60 days. And in exchange for that, I'm going to give you a series of prints that are derivatives of those paintings, maybe original sketches or small sort of studies that I've done. And of course, she was offering to sell the paintings to people ahead of time. And I think she did sell 1 or 2 before she made the show, and then afterwards delivered it. So that's a great story for painters. Printmaking is really common on the site. Obviously, it lends itself well to that. A lot of artists, maybe they're doing an exhibition or have a book project that they've always wanted to do, and that is something that does require a lot of upfront capital. And then you're hoping to sell enough books to recoup your costs. The idea with Kickstarter is you get to bring your project to the world early before you have to lay out all that cash. And then with the support of the community, who they really want to see that book. They really want to have that book. It would be great to do that. So they're basically pre-buying the book.
I've engaged in projects on Kickstarter for someone to do a movie, and this one was on Nelson Algren, and it did not attain its goal, but then they sent a letter saying, well, you've pledged $250, would you please send us a check? And, you know, I mean, I think you still get in touch with people that way and can grow a community, you know, and you still have the option of writing that check and or not. There's also the situation with Josh Harker, a local sculptor who wanted to raise, I think, $750 to do, is that right?
I don't know.
To do a three-dimensional lithography skull, and he raised...
Oh, right, of course.
He raised $74,000.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think became the second highest art-funded project on Kickstarter ever. I mean, you know, it really does help you get in touch with your audience and understand, you know, where you fit in the scheme of things. It's pretty fascinating. You know, and Kickstarter isn't the only model. There's also United States Artists that funds artists, usually to a higher level, and they do a different kind of vetting process. But they're following the Kickstarter model, and there are others. Yes?
The thing I've noticed at Kickstarter is that they also have the difference in what you can pledge. Some people have gotten very creative at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
For example, $2,000 you can spend a day with the artist.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what those types of offers, if you've noticed any effectiveness in those kinds of offers.
The question has to do with Kickstarters and the rewards that are offered by the person who's putting, you know, trying to raise money on Kickstarter, and what kinds of rewards and some of the higher end, more personal rewards where you get to spend a day with the artist, et cetera, are particularly effective.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible question. I think every artist is different. Every artist community is different. When I'm advising individual artists on how to think about those higher level pledges, not only what they should be, but how high they should go, I encourage them to think about who are the people that who are interested in your work, who are your higher level patrons, what is something that you know that people would love to do with you. Have people said, I would love to spend a day with you, just like, you know, maybe you're an artist who travels the world and collects, you know, maybe you're taking photographs and you're collecting a lot of images as you go through your day. Someone said, I would love to go on that journey with you. I did work with an artist who did that. He's a poet and a photographer, and I think he had, for $2,500, you would get the sort of whole body of work he was saying to print. It was a series of limited edition prints, and then you could spend the day with him traveling the world and being sort of this like creative individual. He set, it was $2,500, he set that price, and he also thought about what that would be based on his relationships with existing people. And so I think those are two things to think about. Who are your patrons? What kind of money do they have? What would they give you that for? And then what are the things that people are always asking you for but you never do because it's just like not practical? Because this is a space to really explore those creative experiences.
So you're strong. I'd like to get some more not Kickstarter questions, but first, your sense is that people who put Kickstarter projects up, a high percentage of the money they raise is from their own community, as you said, and that there are correspondingly not a whole lot of folks who are just browsing Kickstarter to look for things that they find attractive.
Yeah, 75% will come from your own network.
Okay. In the far back, be loud, okay?
Okay, Roger Gibson. I live in Chatham, and I looked up I am open to work on that website. I would like to see how we can implement art in some of our empty spaces and just kind of enhance our community using art, visual art.
I think it's totally doable, and I don't see why Chatham should be any different than anywhere else. Dorchester Projects on the far south side, which is like 6,700 south, is Theaster Gates. You know, and Theaster bought a small rundown home and brought people in from the community to fix it up and turned it into a community music and art center, and then bought the building next door to it. And then with it, you know, and Theaster comes from a history of, well, pottery, and so he started making ceramic plates, and then decided that it would be a good idea to serve meals on them, so he'd bring people from the immediate community in, and then white people from the north side to integrate these folks and to get them to participate in a common discussion and realize that, you know, we do have something in common. We all like to eat. You know, and then Theaster was given a large building. I mean, he petitioned for it from the Chicago Housing Project that he's going to turn into an art center. Theaster, Theaster, last name Gates, Gates, is a brilliant, successful artist. All of this he has done in the last 5 years. And, you know, there are plenty of role models. You know, I don't think we all have to go out there and reinvent the wheel every time. We can look at what other people have done and extrapolate. That doesn't mean we have to copy, but we can get inspired by what others have done, you know, and pursue that. You know, the same kind of thing with going to your alderman and asking about vacant spaces and talking about crime. And if we put something in and it doesn't become a flop house, and we can put some art in here and we can have the community do it, and we can bring people in from other communities. You know, there's a good friend of mine, Patrick McCoy, who lives in Bronzeville, who talks about how wonderful it is that the Chicago communities are segregated. And he talks about it because that they all maintain their own cultural identity, and all of them are interested in enhancing and being familiar with their own people and their own culture. I think the trick is to try and get people from another community to come into your community so that we can appreciate each other and, you know, see how, oh, you dance better than me, but, you know, I don't know what I can do better. But you know how different communities have different things and different cultures have different things that historically they've made a priority of. So, would anybody else like to comment on this gentleman's remarks?
Well, I would echo that. I think going to your alderman, one of the things that my committee the Open Wall Committee has found out is that since the 2012 Cultural Plan has been, I was at the Disabled Museum and found out that there were many other communities that wanted to approach their alderman. So what we'll do is we will share with you what our experience has been, and we're trying to put together like a handout that you can take and you can build your own committee and exhibit and replicate that in your own ward. And so really connect with other groups that are doing it and doing it well.
One of the things that makes these projects much more successful is if you can do it without asking the government or other people for money. You know, if you can do it with people power, if you can do it by, you know, I can bring this and I can bring that, can you open the door? You know, and the kinds of things that, you know, someone was talking about what do you do culturally to make Chicago better. You know, one of the ideas I heard was, you know, at every L stop as the train's approaching the next station, instead of saying approaching 65th Street, it says if you get off here you have access to these cultural activities. You know, that doesn't cost any money. You know, to put signage, you know, in all the entities in Chicago that are receiving government funding, if you, you know, insist that they do something good for culture as a result, you know, like, with the Mexican Museum, Tortolera, the director there, was asked if he would like to bring some of his members to the Chicago Symphony. And he said, of course, I'd love to, but first, send some of your players to my place. You know, and those are the kind, excuse me, those are the kinds of things, you know, that you can ask for, and reciprocity. Yeah. And again, there's power in people and there's power in numbers, and these things don't have to cost money. You can insist, you know, that folks, you know, do these kinds of things. Yeah,
I would emphasize that the whole idea of reciprocity is so important, because, you know, if you can do something that you're going to benefit from, and then the party that you're asking for some help is also going to benefit, and really leverage that. You know, make it a good marriage, you know, where you're both going to get something out of it. And, you know, it's amazing. I loved your idea of, like, you open the door and I'm going to bring in the bodies and the manpower. We have learned so much as of late of what we can do on a grassroots, community organizations, how empowering that is. I mean, that's a big lesson here in Chicago. We've seen it happen.
Yeah, and if I can just add, that's something that, again, to underscore what I'm talking about with rewards on Kickstarter and this exchange of value, a lot of times I'll see, you know, people say for $25 I'll email you a thank you note. I wouldn't call that an exchange of value. You know, like, I'll thank you for free. Where I think that these sort of ideas we're talking about, all of that stuff that exists in real life about how this gift economy that we as creative individuals participate in, that all translates to this online space as well. I think it's as true, and you shouldn't throw all the things you know about how to make things in the real world out when you go to a thing like Kickstarter. It doesn't make sense.
That was a really good question. We have about 8 or 9 minutes left, so please proceed. The question has to do with what the guidelines are for Tristan and the pop-up spaces, the artist's responsibility, who has to sit the space, how many hours does it have to be open, etc.
It depends. is the answer. It depends on the type of space and the type of thing, but I'll connect it back to the other question where they're talking about reciprocity. These win-win situations, or you can call it sweat equity. So if you're an artist approaching the pop-up program, be prepared to source your network for help. Make sure that you're able to carry that project through, whether you have to watch your art or whether you have to, you just put it in the window and leave it. Be prepared to do everything yourself, but then know that we're there constantly as a support mechanism.
So it's basically the artist does it.
Well,
you need the space, and the artist is responsible for being there, the art security. If they want it open, they need to be there.
Exactly, yeah. If the door's going to be open, you've got to be there to watch your work, which is the only way to do it, because even if we hired someone to be there, you don't know who that is. Are they going to leave the door open? And your artwork being a unique and precious thing, I couldn't imagine artists wanting to leave it without watching it.
I'm certainly familiar where artists have had others at their space for them.
Yeah.
I've got 3 more questions. Let's take those 3 and we'll work our way from the back forward. Back there. You.
How do you, I know it's pretty obvious when you have like the loop or maybe breakers and walking and things like that, but how do you get the community in the door if there's not, say, 40,000 people walking past your space every day?
The question is if you do these freebie kinds of things, how do you get people to aware? I can answer that, but let's go to Patricia first.
Well, for us, it's fairly easy because there's a huge draw. Everyone that's on the alderman's email is going to get notified about the artwork being there, word of mouth. But we do promotions, we do art receptions, and we've created a web presence, Facebook presence. We do PR. There's so many tools out there with social networking that are free that you can leverage. And that's the best way to promote it.
Facebook. Oh, this past summer I did a project where it was free for artists to participate. However, each artist group had to give me 5,000 email addresses.
What?
And so at the end of the day, I have 80,000 emails, and so we used that to sort of grassroots spam the hell out of the city, and it worked really well.
Did you want to comment on that?
No, no, just thinking.
I think that's fabulous. There's a buddy of mine who says it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission. And I think that, one of the great ways of getting publicity is to make it a group exhibit and insist that to participate you need to share email addresses. And for young artists that are emerging, if you do, I think doing those kinds of exhibits perhaps for 18 months and doing 4 or 5 in that period of time, then you're over it. But if you do that, you can take a mailing list of 500 and you can get it to 3,000 or 4,000 pretty quickly. And a bunch of those people are going to go, hey, how did I get on here? Take me off. And you go, I'm sorry, and you apologize, and you remove them. I teach my kids, know the law, then do what you want. All right, so we had a question over in the red. Yes, please.
I just kind of piggybacking off the last one from Patricia. Your startup and collaboration with 47 Stories is relatively new, and it's really admirable. And I'm really curious how you're kind of going about shaping your identity as kind of bridging these two worlds between art and government, literally having the space in the building, and sort of if you have any expectations for how you're going to go about implementing all for artists.
That's a really great question that has to do with how do you shape the identity of art in a government alderman's office, and you'll have 45 seconds to answer that.
We did it as a committee decision for our identity, and we had volunteer on the committee create the logo. And for the call for entry, we're going to set guidelines, and right now we're approaching the different entities or organizations in the community and asking them how they created their call for entry. And I figure shamelessly steal. Why reinvent something? If someone's done it well, just ask them how to do it and do it.
One more question. Yes, sir.
Do you have any kind of insurance for the spaces that are in the art?
I presume this question is for Tristan and for Patricia about insurance for artists whose work is in these public spaces, quasi-public spaces, and/or public. Tristan.
Certainly there's issues of liability. We have insurance for the spaces. So if someone trips and falls, if something blows up in the space or whatever, but we don't insure individual artworks just because, goodness, how do you even go about valuing art? That's a whole other business.
Patricia.
It's at the artist's own risk, same as what Tristan said.
But can I just say something? Artists should totally insure their work, right? Yeah, okay.
I insure my car.
Right. Okay. You're just saying that it's not your job to insure other artists' work.
All right, you guys have had really good questions, and this has been really interesting. I think we should give each of the panelists an opportunity to say something in summation. Why don't we start with Stephanie?
I guess I would hope that your biggest takeaway hearing from me today, it really is about connecting. I think of Kickstarter very much about connecting art and community, inviting people into your practice, thinking about new opportunities for public engagement, and sharing what it is you have to offer.
Cool. Tristan, thank you.
Artists have been continuously thought of as entrepreneurs, and it's because for the first time, opportunities that are open to entrepreneurs are starting to open up for artists. There's things like Kickstarter. Certainly, funding is not a new theory, but for artists now, it's finally easily available. Open spaces for artists that are free are very similar to how a business might go to a landlord in their first-year lease. They may pay no rent, it may be a percentage of their profits, but if an art gallery went and asked for that kind of lease, business owner would say, you're not going to make any money. But now we offer a tool to get around that, and you as well. And so I think as these opportunities come online for artists, artists will be empowered as entrepreneurs more and more, and we'll see more successful artists and hopefully better communities because of that.
Patricia.
I just say, get involved. It's amazing how much power you have when you get together with a community of people who share your interests, and it's such a great experience. I highly recommend it.
I would like to say that all of you people are here because you are creative. And all of you are really good at applying your creativity to the next work of art you're going to be involved in. I would like to encourage you to apply that creativity to your career and to your world and to think larger than the next body of work. I think that as creative people, we have a responsibility. And I would like all of us to step up our game. And I'm doing another panel at 3 o'clock. Everybody, you've been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.